let's talk about exhaust pipes. Does a leak matter and things like that? We're going to talk about exhausts and exhaust leaks and that kind of stuff. But first of all, I get asked a lot of the time, why do I make videos aimed at novices, aimed at beginners in Nitro? Why do I focus on Nitro so much and not electric and that kind of stuff? Well, I think the answer to that's fairly obvious, but I'll explain anyway. In my opinion, there isn't really much to help anybody who wants to get into Nitro that don't have a knowledge in engines. You know, if you've already got a prior knowledge in engines and mechanics, you can buy yourself a Nitro car, and you might not know anything about Nitro or anything like that to start with, but you'll be able to grasp it because you've got knowledge in the field. But there are some people, particularly people that have been contacting me recently, and if you want to, by the way, there's an email address in the channel description, but also I think maybe in the video description if I remember to put it there. You can email me, or the best way to do it is to just comment your problem, and that way I can have a look at it, but so can other people. So you'll get more help if you just simply comment with the issue that you're having. And loads of people, I've got quite a good following now of people who do know what they're talking about, that watch my videos, and they also go down the comments, and I've seen quite a lot of very helpful people. Lancashire Lad's one of them in particular. There's loads of them, but in particular I've noticed recently Mr. Lancashire Lad going down and helping a lot of these people that need help before I can get there. So the reason I tend to focus on Nitro is simply because I don't think there's really a lot of help that's tailored like that. You know, you go to a shop, they might buy one from a shop, you ask a question, you'll either get someone that doesn't know what they're talking about, or someone that's not really interested in Nitro, they just want to sell a car. They give out some bogus information, people get annoyed, they get frustrated, they give up with it. So I try to break things down and explain it as simply as possible, so that I can help and as many people to get into Nitro, because why not? It's a bloody great hobby, especially if you like engines. We're going to be talking about Nitro cars, obviously, but before we do that, let's get a little understanding of how an exhaust works and what it's there for and different ways that it can work. So you've got your ordinary exhaust. It's just a pipe, comes off your engine from your block, and that's where all the fumes go. So you get your fire, you get your combustion, the air and the fuel go in, bang, it goes out, and it expels it through a pipe. It's as simple as that. Now, we'll get on to the leak problem. Does a leak matter in a minute, but let's just understand that's what happens. With a two-stroke engine, you need a certain amount of back pressure and all this stuff, but we'll go on to that. Now, in the real world, a small leak, even a relatively biggish leak, doesn't really matter to the running of the engine in the real world. It will matter if your engine's got a turbo, because the turbo relies on the exhaust gas, the fumes or whatever you want to call them, to spin that turbo up, and it needs, obviously, to perform properly, maximum flow, you know. So if there's a leak before the turbo, some of that flow is going to be going out the leak. Not all of it's going to be going into the turbo and spinning it up, so you're not going to have as much boost, and you're just not going to have as much power. If the leak is after the turbo, so you got an exhaust leak after the turbo, don't matter. I know a perfect exhaust will be completely sealed. To work optimally, it needs to be completely sealed. But in the real world, if a leak is after the turbo, it's not really going to matter. If you're aiming for absolute peak performance, then yes, it needs to be sealed. But if you're just in a normal daily life, doesn't matter. Before the turbo, it matters. After, doesn't matter. So let's brush that aside because we're talking about Nitro. But now I think you have a little understanding, a small understanding about exhausts. So, with your Nitro engine, if you've got the type where you've got a little rubber coupling here, a lot of them will leak at this little rubber coupling. And also, quite a lot of exhausts will leak on here, this little gasket, because there's a little rubber gasket there. Have I got one to demonstrate? Oh no. It seems Johnny Boy has eaten my little gasket that I had sitting up there, so I'll have to get one in a minute to show you what it looks like. Oh, here it is. I've got one. This one's broken, but that goes on the engine, and then the exhaust goes over like that, and it sits like that. These ones have springs, and it pulls the manifold. This part here is called a manifold, okay, and this part here is called a pipe, exhaust pipe. Some people call them tuned pipes because they can be tuned. The size of them can be tuned for the resonance, the power, the sound, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Generally speaking, and it is in a nutshell, generally, the longer the manifold, the more low-end power torque you'll have. The shorter the manifold, the less low-end torque and power, but the more high speed, the more high-end, high RPM power you'll have. So you can move the power band down low RPMs or up high RPMs by the length of the manifold. It goes, well, I was going to say it goes without saying, but for you it probably doesn't go without saying because you're here to learn about it. So, but a manifold needs to be a clean swoop. So you do get manifolds. I should have got one to demonstrate. There's bound to be one in my little box somewhere, but you do get ones that come out and there's a dead end, and then they go a sharp 90-degree turn. Those work, but they're not very good for flow because the flow goes around. So this is designed for peak performance of this engine, this manifold is. So you'll see it's a nice swooping corner. There's no kinks, no sharp turns. The gases come out there and just go straight out. No stoppages, perfect. And this is a 55mm manifold, by the way. So because I always go for low end torque. I really don't have any care for high end, high RPM power. All my driving, doesn't matter what I'm doing, I always go on small tracks, don't have any high speed straights. It's all low end power. I much prefer low end power, so I always go for a longer manifold on any of my engines, anything if I can, because I just like low end power. So there we go. Now, does the leak matter if it's there? In the real world, no. Does the leak matter if it's there? In the real world, no. However, I know some of you already, especially those of you that do some racing, you've already jumped up and you're poised at the keyboard, ready to type. In the real world, if you're an everyday person, no, them leaks don't matter. In fact, a lot of them leak there anyway. A lot of them leak around the exhaust, down by the on the manifold just below the head there. And a lot of people think their head's leaking. It's just normal. A little bit of an exhaust leak, bit of oil coming out there. It is the way the cookie crumbles. Same for the other leak. But if you're obviously racing, you want peak performance out of your engine, so you don't want any leaks in that manifold. So it will matter a little bit. It will affect the tune of the engine. It'll affect how it's running because of the back pressure and all this stuff. A little bit. And I mean a little bit because they will all leak. And I would actually eat my socks. I'll put money on it. If we could go down to a professional racetrack and inspect everybody's exhausts, I would guarantee that there will be some of them that leak. Particularly around the start of the manifold here, the header, as some people call it. Probably not so much here. It would be leaking there if it's going to be leaking anywhere. There will be some, because of the way they are, they're difficult to seal up. Especially when you're doing 45 minutes flat out around a racetrack. Bumps, vibrations, probably maybe one or two little crashes here and there. I guarantee that will leak. Anyway, it'll matter then if you're looking for peak performance. But if you're just the everyday person and you just start up your car and you just want to drive it around a field, around a BMX track, it ain't going to matter. A lot of people really panic about leaks on exhaust, which has prompted me to make this video because I'd like to try and relax the panicking a little bit. So if you're just the average Joe going out and about, that little leak there ain't going to matter. That little leak here, if you've got one of those rubber couplings or if you've got this type, ain't going to matter. Yeah. But one thing that you might notice is if you stop your engine by putting your thumb or finger or something over the exhaust, which is the better way to do it in my opinion. Some people pinch the fuel pipe and all that load of rubbish that is, don't be doing that, but some people still do it. It doesn't matter how you stop your engine, it's up to you, but put your thumb over the exhaust to stop it. Now what that does is, by putting your thumb over the exhaust or something, finger, thumb, cock, whatever, over the exhaust, it stops the gases. So they're just merrily going out like a conveyor belt. La, 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 la. And you put something over the end, and all of a sudden the piston's going up and down, the fuel's going in, the air's going in, you know, it's creating more, shoving it out there, and they start to back up. They start to back up. They can't go nowhere. Some of them will go up the nipple and then go through there and pressurize the tank. Now this is where some people say that putting your thumb over the exhaust to stop your engine causes the engine to flood because it forces more fuel in the carburetor, makes it harder to start next time. That, my friends, is a load of bollocks. Doesn't happen. It does push a little bit of fumes, a bit more pressure into the tank, but it ain't enough to flood your engine. I've never heard of such rubbish in all my life. So that won't happen. Don't worry about that. But some of it will go up there. So you got your thumb over it, that all backs up, the piston stops dead because it can't expel the gases anymore, stops dead, that's that. If you've got a leak, put your thumb over there, they start to back up, but then they start to come out the leaks. They start to come out these leaks. So you put your thumb over the exhaust, and the engine just muffles a bit, it goes meow, meow, and you're thinking, why ain't it stopping? It's just because there's a simple leak here. A lot of people panic and they go, oh no, it's not stopping, it's not stopping, what have I got to do, what am I doing? It's just a little leak, don't worry about it. The little gases are coming out of the leaks. You know, if the leak's big enough where the engine can keep running, it's nothing major, don't worry about it. If it bothers you, mend the leaks. But if it doesn't, just leave them as they are. I mean, they're not doing any harm. But you're probably thinking, how do I stop it if it's leaking? Well, there's other ways you can do it. You can simply get a screwdriver or something and put it on the flywheel. Yep, that'll stop it. You could take the air filter off, put your thumb over the air filter, stops the air going in, engine can't run. That will stop it. I've ran cars with leaks where you put your thumb over the exhaust and it don't stop. I've ran them for ages like it because I just couldn't be bothered to mend the leaks at the time. They didn't really bother me. I just simply run them until they ran out of nitro. If I thought that I was going to stop at some point, I'd just run it out of nitro. Simple as that. But we're here to talk about exhaust leaks. Those leaks don't matter. But I said they won't matter if you're the average Joe. But you will notice maybe that your engine will run slightly different to what it did before the leaks happened. Now, if your engine was running, in your opinion, really well and you was really happy with it, and then all of a sudden it started to just, perhaps it sounds a bit louder, a bit different, and it just hasn't got the oomph it used to. Well, it could be because you've got a leak. It's not bad for the engine. You're not going to do any damage. But you could always just readjust your carburetor to compensate for the loss in back pressure, because a two-stroke engine does rely somewhat on a bit of back pressure because of the way they work. They sort of chuck a bit out, and then when the piston comes up again, it kind of sucks a little bit back in, a little bit, only a little bit of it back in again, as like a wall or a barrier to keep the fresh stuff in. And then once the piston's up, that kind of just fizzles there, and then when the new bit is expelled, it comes back again. Anyway, that's, I don't want to get in too much of the complications of it because this is aimed at beginners, but it will affect the back pressure and it will affect it runs, the way it runs, a little bit. But listen, it ain't going to do no damage, and it ain't going to matter if you've got a leak. If you're out in the field running and you haven't got any tools with you and you've got a leak, no need to be annoyed, because it ain't going to make a difference. Unless it's a really, really, really bad leak. You can run them with no exhaust, by the way. That also reminds me, because the engine is effectively the pump for the tank. So the engine is the fuel pump. On a real car, your car has a fuel pump in the tank, the diesel or the petrol tank. It's got a pump, an electric pump. Some cars have mechanical pumps, older ones. I've got a camper van. It's got a mechanical petrol pump on the side of the engine, and it's driven by a little gear on the block, and it sucks the petrol from the tank. So if it's evaporated in the carburetor over, say, a week, and you go to try and start it, it won't start straight away till it's pumped enough petrol up, filled the bowl, started working, blah blah blah. Modern cars have electric pumps. You turn the ignition on, primes it, starts. Nitro cars, because the tanks are pretty much, more or less, in most cases, level with the engine. They're not gravity fed. I've heard people say they're gravity fed in the past. Well, what a load of rubbish that is. How some people manage to get through daily life, I'll never know. But anyway, they're not gravity fed. Some might be, but I know, on unique designs. But normal design of nitro buggies and cars and trucks aren't gravity fed. So the engine runs. Obviously, you prime it to start with. The engine runs. You spill some gas. Most of it comes out through here. Some of it, there's a little baffle kind of thing here with some little holes in it. All pipes are designed slightly different, but in a nutshell, little baffle thing, a few little holes. Some of the fumes go in there, through that nipple, through this pipe, into the tank, which then the tank is sealed. There's a rubber seal on the top of the tank that should be sealed. And it then pressurizes this tank, which then pushes the nitro through that pipe into the carburetor. So the whole thing is self-sufficient. It's its pump. So if there's a leak here, or anywhere else, perhaps you've got a hole in your exhaust, some of the pressure's coming out the leak. Some of it's coming out of here. Less of it is going to be going through the nipple, and less of it is going to be pressurizing the tank, which could mean that your engine will run a little bit leaner than it would otherwise, because it's not getting enough pressure in that tank. Think of it as if your fuel pump on your car is getting a bit weak, a bit worn out. It'll have the same effect. I'm sure many of us have had a car in the past that used to run great, and all of a sudden it started lacking a bit of power, and it might be difficult to start. The telltale sign of a weak pump, particularly on a diesel, but petrol and diesel alike. The telltale sign is it don't want to start. Once it starts, it'll probably run okay for a while, but then it just won't want to start in the morning very easily, and then eventually it will get to a point where it won't want to start, but you can get it started, and then it just won't run very well because the pump's gradually wearing out. Well, the same sort of effect will happen if you've got a leak here and it's big enough to stop or reduce the pressure going into this tank. You'll have reduced fuel pressure, because this is essentially what you're getting, fuel pressure. Reduced fuel pressure means reduced fuel going into the engine, which means it will run leaner than it would normally. So it could affect it in that way, but that's a little bit more of an extreme leak. We're really just talking about leaks because I get a lot of people say to me, there's oil coming from the back of the engine where the exhaust goes. I've taken it off and I've had a look at it. There's no cracks, there's no nothing. I put it back, I put it all back together, but it's still there. What do I do? Nothing. Leave it alone, for goodness sake. It's fine. As long as the exhaust is attached and there's nothing physically wrong with the exhaust, it's not got a hole, crack or nothing, and the block's not got a crack, everything's fine, the gasket's alright. A little bit of a leak, leave it alone. It's completely fine. As long as your engine runs alright, it is completely fine. So, I don't really think there's a lot more that I can say for beginners. So I've just had a little think, and I can't, off the top of my head standing here now, I can't think of any other thing that I need to talk about exhausts. Basically, I know there's more science in the way exhausts work, the diameters, the widths, the blooming temperatures, heat wraps, and all that stuff. Perhaps I might do a more advanced video one day. I don't really feel like I'm qualified to do an advanced video for people that want to learn more advanced stuff, because, well, I just don't feel like I am qualified to do that kind of thing. I'm qualified to help beginners because I've been there and done all that kind of stuff 20 years ago, but yeah, I don't know. But there is more, and if you want to put all the other more sciencey stuff and more advanced stuff, complex stuff, racing stuff, if you want, put it in the comments and we can all learn from you, because obviously you know everything. Thanks for watching. If you like this sort of thing, think about sticking around. There is a little button for it. It says, what does it say? Subscribe. It begins with an S. It says something on there. Press that button, and not only will you be helping me, but maybe I can keep helping you. If you've got any questions about nitro engines, about nitro cars, nitro engines, if I haven't already covered it in a video, there's plenty of them, by the way. Go back on my videos. I will do my best to help you out. So put comment, blah 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 blah, and we'll have a nice happy day. Thanks for watching. Take care. I hope I've helped you.